Okay guys, well I don't normally do earthquake reports because I have actually mentioned in my Earth Changes updates that we could expect to see an increase in the severity and frequency of earthquakes, and this is in fact what we have seen in Italy, and we now are looking at the death toll approaching 250, and there have been towns that were completely levelled. So we're seeing a definite increase in this tectonic movement, and we have seen an increase all year, just like we've seen an increase in volcanic activity. Now, the other very interesting and very significant behaviour that I'm seeing with the tectonics in regards to this earthquake in Italy is just how many aftershocks they have experienced since this large quake, and so far they've seen about 250 aftershocks. So this is something that I think we should be paying attention to. Now, we also saw not long after the Italian quake that Myanmar had an earthquake, which was a 6.8, and that damaged scores of ancient temples and killed 3 people. And we're actually not seeing a lot of these events being covered in the mainstream media. And it seems that they're trying to downplay what is occurring because they don't want to spook the cattle. And so unless you're actually paying attention and researching into these events yourself, you are not actually going to be in possession of the information you need to prepare yourself for these events that are only going to continue to escalate as we move towards the tipping point. Because we are now in the last degrees of the Iron Age, and we are just going to continue to see an escalation in these earth changes, but also in the political events. And we can expect that when we see an escalation in the earth changes, that we will see an escalation with their political events in regards to the war drums getting louder and these false flags, you know, with the terrorist attacks becoming more frequent. So I would also be paying attention to that part of the picture when we're now looking at how much we're seeing an escalation in these earth changes, especially when it relates to earthquakes and how they are now increasing in their severity and their frequency, because we've also seen earthquakes happening over in northern Japan with more frequency. This is from the 21st of August. There was a 6.0 earthquake that struck off northern Japan, and it was the 3rd strong quake in the region in consecutive days. And we're also seeing earthquakes in parts of the world where we've never actually seen many earthquakes before. And we are now starting to see earthquakes in Australia happening every few days. So I would just suggest that we continue to be very aware of our surroundings and understand that we are going to continue to see an escalation in all of these tectonic shifts. Now, these events were warned about. When we look at the information left to us by the ancient philosophers, they warned us that we could expect these events to occur. Now, Aristotle went on to say that all earthquakes and disasters are warnings that there's too much corruption in the world. Now, this is because he knew that when mankind were corrupted, they were in the lower ages of the cycle. And in the lower ages of the cycle, when we were experiencing earthquakes and disasters, that we would be in the last degrees of the Iron Age, and that this corresponds to the corruption within mankind. Epictetus also said that events do not just happen but arrive by appointment, again showing that none of this is random, that this is all part of a cycle, and that when we understand the cycle we exist in, we can prepare for these events and we can understand what is occurring rather than just existing in confusion and fear, because you don't want to be moving into fear as you see these events begin to escalate more and more. Now finally, Thomas H. Burgoyne went on to say that nature's laws move slowly and imperceptibly, yet surely and exact, and the time will certainly come when man will be forced into consciousness of these laws, whether he will or no. Nature is no respecter of persons, and those who will not move and progress in harmony with her laws of advancement must, of necessity, pass out with the old. And so we can either pay attention and move through these times with an understanding of all of these events that are occurring, or we can just be ignorant to them, and these events will eventually cause us to take decisions and choices that may lead us to a negative situation, and therefore we will just pass out with the old, like the rest of the masses who are completely unaware of what is occurring and why it is occurring, because they look to modern science for all their cues. And in actual fact, unless you're actually looking at all of this information as an independent researcher, you are not actually going to see this reported on the mainstream media. You are not going to actually see the mainstream media addressing why we are seeing an escalation in all of these earthquakes, in their severity and their frequency, as well as the volcanic activity that we're also seeing increasing. So what we need to do is take responsibility for our souls, take responsibility for expanding ourselves intellectually, and look at this situation that we are now in from a perspective where we bring all of the information together and then have that understanding for why this is all occurring. And then we will actually put ourselves in a better position, because these events will just continue to escalate and they will just continue to get more severe. Well, anyway, I will leave this here and I will post everything underneath, and you can check that out for yourself in more detail. And as always, peace out.